Now, Deputy Chairman of the House Committee on Environment, Terseer Ugbor, joins us now to discuss the protection of endangered species in the wild and the Conservation of Protection Bill, which he sponsored on the floor of the House. Good afternoon, Mr. Ugbor. Thank you for joining us here on Newsday.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Now, from the excerpt of that report, we did hear you say that the bill has crossed first and second reading in the House of Reps, but some critics argue that Nigeria's track record when it comes to environmental protection has been rather poor, with inadequate enforcement of laws. So how does this bill aim to overcome these historical challenges?
Yes, thank you very much. We've had issues in Nigeria in enforcement of laws because we dropped the ball as regards our environmental protection activities, sanitation, basic waste management, basic infrastructure for waste recycling is completely lacking in Nigeria. Nigeria does not have a single mechanized waste processing plant. So for many years, over the decades, we basically dropped the ball on anything to do with environmental management and conservation. And then the laws have been a little bit weak, and where they've not been weak, they've not been properly enforced. In regards to environmental conservation, in regards to endangered species conservation, we have a regulation under the NESRA that is in place, but is very weak, was promulgated in the 70s or 80s, and prescribes very little penalties on wildlife crime, on wildlife trafficking and things like that. Unfortunately, Nigeria became a hub for wildlife trafficking. And so even though we don't have as much wildlife in the country because we've basically decimated our wildlife in consumption of bushmeat, and we've done very little conservation over the years, we became a hub where poachers can poach illegal wildlife from across Africa, smuggle it into the country, and smuggle it out of Nigeria to Asia. So Nigeria became a weak link for global conservation efforts, especially in the areas of ivory, in the area of pangolins, in the area of rhino horns. These are the 3 or 4 most sought after wildlife products that Nigeria happen to be a transit route through. And you know that wildlife trafficking flows through the illegal drug trafficking route. It flows through the illegal human trafficking route. It's a global crime. It's one of the most lucrative crimes, international crimes in the world. And Nigeria, unfortunately, is tagged as one of the hubs for illegal wildlife crime. And so what we've done with the bill is to domesticate the international treaties on wildlife, to domesticate the international treaties on migratory species, and other international drug and wildlife trafficking crimes under the UNODC guidelines. So this has basically helped us to bring our laws up to speed, to make us become more compliant with international protocols that we are already signatories to, and of course to become a positive example for Africa in terms of environmental conservation and protection. This has a lot of benefit for ecotourism, has a lot of benefits for our biodiversity, has a lot of benefits for job creation and employment, and of course, most importantly, the maintenance of our forests in the country. You know very well that Nigeria has less than 5% of our country is covered by forests. So we've almost decimated our forest cover because of firewood and other woods that we're cutting and exporting out of the country every day for furniture and other things. So if we don't begin to take seriously the protection of our wildlife, our endangered species, and our forests, few years down the line from today, we might have no wildlife left in our forests and would have decimated our entire forest cover, and will just become a country that has no serious influence on, or interest at all whatsoever on ecotourism, conservation, and biodiversity.
All right, Honorable Ugbor, let's look at it from another dimension. We've actually spoken about the security of the nation and how it impacts several spheres of our life. And you look at this closely. Most of all the game reserves are actually situated in the north, which means that clearly the insecurity in the north would also create an avenue for some of this illicit trade to actually happen, because there is little or no policing that is happening in that particular region. How do we use security as an avenue to restore peace and to ensure that conservation becomes a top priority?
Well, yes, security is always a major challenge, because when there's insecurity, then tourism finds it difficult to thrive, because tourists will not go to an insecure location where they don't feel safe. This is very, very important. It is important for our tourism sector. It's important for our economy. It's important for food security, for everything. Security is at the center of everything. But Nigeria has 9 national parks. One of the popular ones is the Calabar, the Cross River National Park. Cross River doesn't have insecurity issues. The park is available. People can visit, but it hasn't been developed, and it hasn't been raised to the level where it attracts tourists. Is there. We have the Gashaka National Park, which is also a national park that is free from insecurity. It can be visited. There are NGOs working there. There are communities living there. The Yankari Park in Bauchi is the major park that has been disrupted by insecurity. And then there was the Lake Chad Park, which also oversaw the Sambisa Forest, which of course has been taken over completely by insecurity and climate change because of the drying up of the lakes and everything. So tourism has completely stopped there. And then there's the park in the Edo National Park, which is also free, relatively free from insecurity, and can be visited by tourists. So there's a lot that can be done. The fact that there's insecurity shouldn't stop us from still improving and developing our tourism potentials in the country. Tourism is such a huge sector. It creates a lot of jobs. That is why every country in the world, countries depend so much on tourism. Everything you hear about Dubai, about Qatar, about most of the international locations in the world today rely on tourism for foreign inflows of FX. So Nigeria needs to take advantage of this. And then, of course, there's domestic tourism. Our visit to Kenya, one of the instructive things that came out from there was that 80% of the tourism going on there is domestic tourism, which is the basis of any tourism to thrive. So as much as you're trying to develop the international aspect of it, you need to ensure that the local and domestic tourism thrives. That is the platform through which the international tourists will rely on. So we need to go back to a period where domestic tourism was a priority. When the Obudu Cattle Ranch was set up, it was a domestic tourism initiative, and a lot of Nigerians visited Obudu. There was a hype around the Obudu, but Obudu today there was no priority by successive governments to keep Obudu going, and Obudu is there today. It was largely domestic tourism that kept Obudu Cattle Ranch going. Obudu is a safe place to visit, but we're not visiting there. So it's not all about insecurity. It's about the interest, the passion, and the commitment to keep our national parks safe, to keep them flourishing, to market them internationally and locally to our people, and to create the logistics and infrastructure to take visitors to our national parks and to generate revenue from our national parks and to engage the local communities in conservation and biodiversity efforts so that they can benefit from it. They can earn revenue from these tourism potentials within their communities, and of course, for the future preservation of our country and our society as a whole.
All right. Well, conservationists have called for harsher penalties for offenders. My question is, what's the rationale behind the sentencing guidelines in this bill in terms of how it might serve as a deterrent for those who choose to exploit the wildlife that we have?
I mean, legislation is everything. Conservation efforts has to depend on stronger penalties and stronger laws to deter poachers, to deter traffickers from engaging in this business. Several years ago in Nigeria, there was a case where an elephant was killed in Nigeria, and the people who committed this illegal activity were arrested, but they were never persecuted. Recently, there was an elephant that was killed in Borno by soldiers and a chairman, a local government chairman, and that issue currently is undergoing some judicial inquiry under the office of the NSA. And then there was a case of a baby elephant that was captured by a poacher recently, and he was trying to smuggle the baby elephant out of the country illegally, because it's illegal to smuggle endangered species, elephants and things like that out of the country. They got to the border post, they were arrested. By the next day in the morning, somehow, the elephant and the smuggler escaped from detention. You know, a baby elephant is big. It's not a small animal, and this person was able to escape with a baby elephant out of Nigeria. You know, so there's been no laws. There are no penalties. And then we're talking about illegal trafficking of endangered species, of elephant ivory, of tusks, you know, and things like that. Pangolin scales. The international cost. A cost of an ivory, for example, will cost you something like $100,000. And if you are caught with ivory, that means you've killed several elephants, you get a penalty of 10,000 naira, you know, and you go scot-free. So usually, when the penalty is so weak, the people who are involved in this illegal activity will continue to perpetrate it, because they know that when they are caught, they can pay the fine very cheaply from their back pocket, and they can go right back into doing this international trafficking, this illegal crime. So it is important that wildlife is protected, the laws are strengthened, so that the country can benefit more holistically from tourism, from our wildlife. It is so important that we do this. Kenya passed a law in 2014 that increased made the penalties for illegal crime, illegal wildlife crime, stiffer, and they saw a 90% reduction in in wildlife crime in Kenya, and that is how their tourism sector, wildlife tourism, has boomed and has gone off the roof. Now they're earning over $2 billion annually. Nigeria earns almost nothing from tourism, from wildlife tourism, from conservation tourism, biodiversity and things like that. So we need to move the needle. And one of the ways that we can do this is to strengthen the laws, is to delineate the responsibility and the roles to the several agencies, environmental agencies, that have jurisdiction to protect our forest, protect our wildlife, keep the forest safe from banditry and insecurity issues, so that tourists can go in, and of course keep our biodiversity healthy for the future generation and the future safety of our planet, and of course our environment in Nigeria as a whole.
All right, Honorable. Information and sensitization is a very crucial needle point that needs to be moved to ensure that whatever we're trying to do when it comes to conservation and also protecting endangered species are actually up there. In terms of sensitization, some have said take it to religious bodies, to the grassroots. What is being done? Because some people, especially those that consume bushmeat in excess, do not really understand the impact and the ripple effect it has on our environment and on conservation.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Sensitization is a top priority for wildlife conservation. You talked about bushmeat. I come from Benue State. I'm a chief man from Benue State, and we are, I think, probably one of the largest consumers of bushmeat in Nigeria. So you can imagine that I'm taking a huge risk, so to say, to fight that. We consume bushmeat more sustainably. We consume bushmeat more responsibly, so that the generations coming behind us will find the bushmeat that our great-grandfathers consumed. And the bushmeat that we're consuming today, we can leave some of it for our generations coming before us to also consume it. But how do we achieve this? We have to consume bushmeat more sustainably. We have to be able to create a culture of farming, protecting our bushmeat, hunting these things in a way that we don't completely wipe out the populations of the different species of bushmeat that we have in the country. And if there's a particular bushmeat that is going extinct completely, then we need to protect it so that it doesn't go extinct and we don't lose that species of bushmeat in Nigeria forever. This is very, very important. So sensitization is very key. It is one of the reasons why the federal government has decided to kind of enter public-private partnerships with international and local NGOs who are interested in taking over the tourism aspects of our national parks. One of the purposes of this is to do more awareness, more marketing of our national parks, more sensitization, more outreach, and of course to develop a logistics framework through which tourists can be taken to our national parks. Camps can be set up. People can go in and have their holidays during the holiday seasons at our national parks. All these initiatives are all aimed at creating more awareness, more information about the importance of our biodiversity, importance of conservation, the richness of our national parks. Nigeria is so rich in biodiversity. Many countries of the world have few number of wildlife in large quantities. So you see a country like Kenya has 35,000 elephants. A country like Botswana has 110,000 elephants. Nigeria has less than 400 elephants, not even up to 1,000, less than 400 elephants, and we're still killing them. Once communities see an elephant, the next thing, they just look at it as bushmeat, and they just go ahead and kill it. So a few years from now, we'll wipe out all the elephants from Nigeria. So what happens to the tourism potential? So the bushmeat that you're eating today could make you millions of naira and millions of dollars if you only preserved it and protected it and saw the bigger picture of what these bushmeats can earn you or can do for you in other areas instead of just turning it into bushmeat and eating it.
Very well said.
It's important that people are aware and yeah.
You've certainly done justice to this topic, and we'd like to thank you for your time. Honorable Terseer Ugbor, Deputy Chairman, House Committee on Environment, we applaud you for your fight for the conservation of our wildlife here in Nigeria, and we wish you well in the implementation of this bill.